Marisol. It's so good to see you. How are you today?
I'm doing so good, Vanessa. Thank you so much for having me to here today.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to talk to you about your case study in the book, your brand. You do such incredible things for the world in so many different ways. So let's start there, actually. Can you just
Yeah,
tell me a little bit about your background and where you're at, like how it all came to be?
yeah, absolutely. And I am extremely grateful to be able to share my story. I am Marisol. I'm a first gen professional and graduate. I come from a family. I'm a daughter, a very proud daughter of Mexican immigrants that, my parents came from Mexico to live the American dream. And I think, their goals was to be able to send their kids to school, right? And let us figure out what exactly where we're gonna be. I think, my parents had always joked like the only careers that we were able to be was like you can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer, you can be an engineer. Those were the only pathways that they knew, right? That existed because that's what they saw like in TV. So with that in mind, I think, my parents, were working class, always working, but they did focus on education. They're like education is the only way out of poverty, and that's what's going to give you that opportunity. So with that being said, I got the amazing opportunity to do my undergraduate degree at Cal Poly Pomona, where I majored in political science. And I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. I thought, my parents always instilled in me at a very young age that I can debate, that I can argue, that I'm always willing to either fight the fight and stuff like that. But I think through undergraduate degree, I had the many different privileges of being able to do everything a little bit. And then I went to a courtroom and I was like, hey, I don't think I want to be a lawyer. I think I can want to be something else. So I think even that pushing back to my parents of like, I think there's something else better out there for me. And that's what brought me to Sacramento. So that's where I've been for the last 8 years. I currently work in the legislature, doing policy. And for me, pursuing my MBA in which I'm going to be graduating, June 2026, was this intersection of being able to connect the policy world, right, to business and how they're interconnected because I've been that bridge, to my family. So I've been very lucky to be able to find that intersection. And with that, building my story, right, building who I am and why I do the things that I do.
Tell me more about that bridge for your family. I know it's such a powerful part of who you are.
Yeah, oftentimes being the first gen and being the first one, I think, my parents didn't speak English. So I was that bridge, that connector where, I would translate to, I was very, English is my second language, and just being able to translate for my parents when it came to doctor's appointments, right? Or when it came to, they got hurt in their workplace and being able to, work with workers' comp and stuff like that at a very young age. I knew that I held this power, right? To be able to advocate for folks and communicate their needs. And even though sometimes my parents didn't know exactly what to say, I would be like, okay, how can I better communicate with them? How can I better tell their story in a way for them to get a service, for them to be heard in the system that was not meant or created for them? So I think that has led me to the work that I do today, right, in the legislature of different priorities, right? Like so many things are happening and I'm meeting with so many different people, but I get to bring people and hear their opinions and be like, hey, this is the legislature, and the work that I get to do as legislative director allows me to advocate and bring those stories of my upbringing in order for me to connect, the everyday working person, to be able to connect them to a system that is meant supposed to work for them. So I'm that bridge once again.
Yeah, elaborate on how kind of that different way that you see things has helped you and how it inspired you to start some of the things you've done, like the
Yeah.
podcast that you did, some of the public posting with your brand. How did that way that you've lived, that way that you've seen things, how did you kind of operationalize that into something
Yeah.
material?
Oftentimes in the places that we've been, right? They're not meant for a Latina to be taking space and be making decisions. But I think for me, in the way I showed up with my own personal brand was how do I make sure that more people look like me, right? How do I make sure that more people get this opportunity to say, hey, if Marisol did it, so can I. So I had to be very intentional about showing up online, right? Showing up online with my true authentic self. And oftentimes when I would look up a podcast, like I wouldn't hear people that looked like me or had the same journey as me. So I was like, look, if it doesn't exist, how can I start something, right? How can I bring professionals are that have done it, 10 years in advance, or maybe they're in the same career trajectory, you know, like just like I am, and we're trying to figure out life right now, right? As first gen professionals. So that's what I started my podcast with, and being able to share, like, let's talk about financial management. Let's talk about, salary negotiations, which oftentimes we're not brought up. And I think that's the beauty that I think that led me to pursue my MBA, because of those conversations of like, or how to put a boundary, right? A first gen, a boundary with your parents, your immigrant parents, where they're like, you should be doing this and that. But it's like, no, I'm also building my future. So just being able to show up in those spaces, um, really allowed me to connect and build a brand around that. And I think that has allowed me to connect with so many different people. I think I'm also somebody that really enjoys fashion, and it's a way for me to show, like, who I am as a person, both lip, a big earring and big jewelry. It has allowed me to really connect with folks. And like in my work that I do for my 9 to 5, I think here in the legislature, people have like recognized me for showing up just truly how I am.
Yeah. And I do love how, it's so awesome to me how many spaces and how many like traditional tropes, if you will, that you break through, and that you're unapologetically authentic about being who you are, and that helps achieve this more bridges, right? More people that are showing up in these spaces. And you've been so just deliberate about that with your brand. And I think the effect, when I think about your podcast, which I want you to talk to me a little bit about, the ripple effect of that, like your listeners and the people that have benefited, the people that, you could make things a little bit easier for, because the path that they're trying to go down, and the struggles that you had. You talked about some of the topics of like financial resiliency, and like what does it feel like to be the person not only creating that for yourself, but helping your family through that stuff. These are things that are so just personal to the experiences you've had, but that you've really identified this whole target audience too that you can help. So talk a little bit more about that, because it's so special. It's just,
Yeah.
I think
And I
such a ripple effect.
absolutely, and I think, being a first gen, like coming into the workforce, like what is a 401k, right? What does it mean to
Mhm.
start investing? So how do I make sure that I break down some of those barriers to the podcast and build a community that is like, hey, I'm in the same boat as you. How can I find somebody that is going through the same thing and figuring it out, right? I think, and that was the goal of the podcast. But I think even the imposter syndrome also did hit when creating something like that, some content like that, because oftentimes you compare yourself, right, to other people. You're like, well, I actually don't look like that. People are not going to listen. Like we kind of have this kind of self-doubt, but it's like, I had great mentors in my life where they were like, hey, why don't you treat this as a kind of like a research project, like let's test the hypothesis. What is the outcome you would like? And if you can't prove that, or it doesn't work that way, then that's it. Like if the hypothesis just didn't make it, right? Like she's like, think think of these projects in that way, right? And so that really allowed me to be like, okay, well, it's just a project. It's like nothing else is gonna happen. I'm gonna put something out there, and some people might resonate, some people might not, and I'm gonna try to build the niche or get even more niche if certain people start gravitating towards that type of engagement and that type of work. So I think that allowed me to like kind of trial and error, right? Like I think oftentimes when people think about personal brand or how you're showing up, they think that you have to have everything figured out. And I think even with your class, Vanessa, that I took very early on, being part of, the MBA program, like, no, like you don't have to figure it out. You're gonna figure out once you start putting content and people are expecting it. And then that's how people start to recognize you. You're not gonna be the expert right away. You're gonna be able just to share that experience. Which I think is what I always tell people, like put yourself out there. You just never know what it's gonna resonate and who's gonna want to follow your content. And then people will come to you. And it's also, I think, the energy that you put out there in the world.
I love how you said that, because it's like what can hold us back, the fear that can hold us back, it also holds someone else back from benefiting from all the things you have to offer, right? And so in a way, it's like we can flip the script and say, you know what, I have to do this, or I'm almost being a little selfish. And it's so funny when we put the word personal in front of brands, and I say this over and over, but first we think it has to be about self-promotion when brands are really about the customer and the audience you're helping, number one. And
Right.
number two, we think we have to have it all figured out. Mickey Mouse was a mouse that, Walt Disney drew, and then his imagination. And that's how the brand started. It wasn't cruise ships or theme parks, but it evolved. We worry about balance sheets when brands don't evolve, but then we think, oh, I can't start my personal brand. I can't be a thought leader until I know everything and am everything and get all these degrees. And it's just true.
No. And you're gonna
Um,
hold so many different identities. And you have to
mhm.
just put yourself out there. That's what I tell people. Put yourself out there and you'll figure it
Yeah.
out.
So, Marisol, you're in chapter 9, is where your case study's featured. And in that chapter, we talk about kind of a very streamlined funnel of how do you not burn out and how do you theme content, so that you can use it in enough spaces and you can kind of get into, goals setting wise, a weekly rhythm, but you can always start smaller. But how do you do all of that? That's basically what chapter 9 is about. And so, you had for a while, you had a podcast you regularly put out. Now you put out other types of content regularly. How do you view kind of that concept? Because you're the person putting out the content. So you think you put out the content and everybody sees it, but you're so good at coming back to things, recycling messages, recycling pieces, like with your podcast, the way you would tease it, right? Explain to me a
Yeah.
little bit about the difference between the person putting stuff out for the brand, but then the consumer and what they see. You have such a keen understanding of that.
Oftentimes we put our pressure that we obviously need to start creating all this new content. Like, and that's not necessary. I think in the conversations with in my podcast, right? It's a little snippet, it's a little quote, something that resonates with other folks. Because at the end of the day, it's not about you. It's not about
Mhm.
like who you are. It's more about what you're going through and being able to share it out with others. And then it's like a mirror. It's like a self-reflection of the work. And that's why people gravitate. That's why people engage because they're like, I see you. I'm also going through that similar thing. Or I'm also, and I think that's the beauty of this work that it's just literally you just have to put something that you're going through in order for other people to connect. And when it comes to content and stuff like that, like you have to do a kind of a trial and error. All right, I'm gonna experiment with this, right? Maybe it's a video content, maybe it's a video, maybe it's I want to share more about this aspect of my life or this season of my life, right? Like I'm gonna start a new project and just being able to connect both. Like we're all interconnected in this world. We're not like we don't live in silos. I think at the end of the day, like I'm pursuing my MBA, but I also started a small business of aguas frescas, and I also have a podcast. I'm also a ledge
Yeah.
director, and all these titles exist. Um, and it's just truly showing up in all those different spaces and being able to say, yes, I'm that, and I can connect you here, or this is what I'm going through when I'm navigating. But it's just about putting yourself out there and using all your different identities to be able to tell your story because you're the only one that can tell that story.
Having that theme that you bring it all together with having people helping people to navigate through being a first gen, and I think there's a lack of info in that space because I think an assumption we make is the hard generation is the generation that creates the first gen, and it is a hard generation, right? But then the first gen is really hard because you have no roadmap for so many of these things, and so in all these places, like you said. And I love the way that you share content because you just told us this exhausting list of who you are. You have a full-time day job. You're pursuing a graduate degree. You're a business owner. Yet you stay consistent with your content because you understand how to show up at key places and key times on the internet. And I think that that's really a big concept first of the book and of building a brand. We don't want burnout, right? Especially in this age of, content is so easy to just churn out anyway with AI now, right? It's all about the distinction. It's all about taking a moment, like you said, to see what resonates with people, and to create that content that really, challenges those assumptions and provides something a bit different. You do it so well. Um, so one more question. What do you think having kind of this distinctive point of view, this corner of the world with your brand, what do you think it's changed about like impacts you were able to make or places you were able to go?
Oh, absolutely. I think putting myself out there has opened so many different opportunities. I think one of the work that I've done is I'm a commissioner in Sacramento County on supporting women and girls, right?
Mhm.
And having a business and being as you know, having a small business in Sacramento County, I share those experiences. Both of these items exist, and now I'm able to advocate and say, "Hey, county, you know, given this experience of running a small business, we're not supporting women in this way." Right? So all of these different identities are able to exist, and it's work that I do every single day that I don't have to do something extra because I live it every day, right? So that's how I'm able to show up and not feel burned out of like, oh my God, that's just another task. So I really try to embed that in every decision I make of like what else is happening in the world, and not try to live in bubbles, and being able to connect everything and being that bridge. And I think oftentimes right now with even like artificial intelligence, I think the most successful people that I've seen like having that brand out there, it's the most authentic people, right? Like right now you can tell when somebody wrote a LinkedIn post with
Mhm.
AI, and or you
Yes.
can tell when somebody's being very vulnerable about, getting laid off. You can
Mhm.
tell the difference when somebody's just trying to be more of that performative, like this is just, you can tell. So I think I always tell people like this is our time to tell who you are, and people are going to gravitate towards your brand, and it's going to open so many new opportunities that you never thought, right? Even for like this my small business of aguas frescas, I have gotten opportunities to be able to cater to businesses because of who I am and how I show up. And I'm like, this is, I'm doing this commission work where I'm a ledge director, and but I also have a small business, and I come and people are like, can I buy water from you in the capital community? And all these things coexist all at the same time. So I always tell people, bring your whole identity to the work that you do.
Love it. It's like a magnet, right? And we
Mm-hmm.
talk about this pull
Right?
marketing effect. Like we want that as a brand, right? We want people to say, you know what? These, I always use running shoes as an example because it's something I buy regularly, but these tennis shoes I have are getting old. And so I want another pair, and here's the exact brand and model I want. And, that's what happens to us when we create that brand that serves others so well and helps them reach their aspirations so well that then, it comes back to us, right? People go, I need her to come be the spokesperson for this, the commissioner for this, the caterer for this, whatever that may be.
Yeah,
All right, so now
absolutely.
I saved the very easy question for last. Um, in 5 to 10 years, where do you see things taking you? This whole persona, this brand, this all the amazing things you do. Where do you see your whole, I'll call it a platform because it is in 10
Yeah,
years.
I think my ideal job and role in career and my personal and professional life, I think is being able to um create a movement in the sense of 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 women, empowering women of color to put themselves out there and take up all the space, and just really like bring all their cards when they show up to any workplace. I think it can be, you can be in corporate America, or you can be working for the government, you can be in the nonprofit, you can be a homestay mom. But how do we make sure that we have this movement where women of color are being valued for the work that they do and everything that they are bringing to this world? So I think that's kind of the long term. I think, of course, that can go along with continue to advocate in the policy and creating, making sure that we have good policies for women to be able to, have time to take care of their kids or be able to go on maternity leave, and just continue to support women in this trajectory. I think that's something that I'm gravitate towards, because it's really hard, as women, as we navigate the world that we live in today.
Yeah, amazing. Amazing. You exemplify service first. Thanks so much for the difference you make and the courage you have. It's, you step out there, despite all those fears that you talked about that we all have. So thank you again. And if there, I, and is there anything else? Is there anything we didn't cover that you wanted to chat about?
No, I think we covered everything. I appreciate this time to be able to share my story and to be able to connect. And if you know folks that are viewing this to be able to, follow me on Instagram. I think I know Vanessa's gonna put all the details in the description, but being able to share and being able to build the community is always really important. And I think if I can be any resource to anybody, always happy to connect folks.
And we find you at Moments of Marisol is
That's
your
right.
handle. Yeah.
That's my Instagram handle. And then Marisol Ibarra on LinkedIn if it's a professional. But Moments of Marisol, you can see my everyday, my in between, my fun days.
Everyone needs to follow. You're in for a treat. Awesome. Thank you so much. And we will see each other soon, see each other in
Absolutely.
May. And I really appreciate the time. Thank you again.
Yeah. All righty, Vanessa. Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.